the Milwaukee Road EP-2s. One of the most unsung electric locomotives in American history, but one of the most successful. They were among the most distinctive and powerful electric locomotives of their time, and in many ways were very much like the GG1s that would come along later, at least in terms of overall aesthetic and success. The EP-2s were great electric locomotives, and are among one of the most iconic locomotives from the Milwaukee Road. Under the white notation, they were, a mouthful. They were 2480 plus 0842. They had a lot of wheels. But that was normal for early electric locomotives. In terms of their history, well, following the success of Milwaukee Road's electrification project of their mountain division in 1915, they decided to move ahead and start electrifying the coast division. Yeah, see, electrification projects, what an interesting novel concept. If only some people would start doing that again. Hang the wires, you cowards! I'm sorry to go on a tangent, but I actually had a recent comment of someone pointing out, wires are expensive. Listen to me. I recognize that the immediate expense of electrification is generally fairly expensive, but the cost savings over time speak for themselves. Electrification projects have a history of paying for themselves within just 10 years or so, sometimes less. Now, I understand there are other issues to contend with, like tunnels and bridges, and the fact that the double-stacked container freights are taller than trains used to be, but you could just hang the wires higher, use taller contacts to reach them, or there's a way to do this. Stop making excuses and hang the wires, you cowards! Anyway, so Milwaukee Road did do that back in the 1910s, and in 1917, Coast Division, they were gonna do that, and as part of that project, they were gonna order 5 new electric locomotives from General Electric for $200,000 apiece. These ones would turn out to be a lot more modern than previous designs had been, which were the box cab style of the early electric locomotives. These, on the other hand, were a bit sleeker. The Milwaukee Road was the only railroad to actually order this particular design, probably because they were one of the few in America that had electrified lines, and more specifically, DC electrified lines. Yeah, it's something to probably keep in mind. The EP-2s were not AC. They were 3,000 volt DC, with 12 370 horsepower gearless traction motors mounted directly to their axles. Those traction motors in particular were actually a notable improvement compared to previous designs. They were called bipolar motors, because each of them had only 2 field poles mounted directly to the locomotive's frame just beside the axle. With the motor armature mounted directly to the axle, it provided an entirely gearless design, resulting in an engine that made almost no noise at all. They were very, very quiet. They weren't the first electric locomotives to use this type of motor. The New York Central S motors had them as well, but in those days the EP-2s were the largest to use them, and because of this, their nickname became simply bipolars. That's what people called them, rather than EP-2. The layout of the motors was also a little weird. EP-2s are car bodies, but they consisted of 3 different sections. A small center section contained a steam boiler. That wasn't for propulsion, that was for heating passenger coaches, because steam engines and passenger steam heating, they needed that. But the larger sections contained the electrical equipment for actually moving the engines. While the car body was in 3 sections, the frame was in 4, hinged at the joints, with the 2 middle sections attached to the end sections of the locomotive body. 12 of their wheels were drivers. In an AAR, they'd be 1B plus D plus D plus B1. Perplexing as an arrangement as that may be by modern standards, it worked very well, especially at the time. The bipolars were tremendously powerful, and were designed to be as such. They were meant to be able to pull any Milwaukee Road passenger train without any help at all whatsoever, and were originally delivered without multiple control units because of this. They just didn't need them. General Electric claimed they could hit a top speed of 90 miles per hour, but Milwaukee Road only rated them for 70. though their starting tractive effort was colossal at 116,000 pounds of force, which would have been insane for the 1920s, though their continuous tractive effort was quite a bit less at 42,000, but that was enough to keep plenty of trains going, especially passenger trains, which were lighter than freight. When they were first introduced, they became instantly recognizable due to their unique appearance, and came to symbolize the Olympian, which was their premier passenger train from Chicago to Seattle. Because of their fame over where they operated, they were good for publicity, and there were multiple demonstrations in which one of them was able to outpull contemporary steam locomotives, which isn't a surprise given their tractive effort was so ludicrous. They were also very good on maintenance and very cheap to operate. They didn't use a tremendous amount of power, and did not need nearly as much care when compared to, say, steam engines, which needed constant attention. They could run from Tacoma to Othello without stopping for servicing at all, and could haul trains up grades that had required 2 steam engines to manage. To say that the Milwaukee Road was happy with them would be a massive understatement. They ran almost unchanged from 1919 to 1953. The only major alteration was their numbering. In 1939, they were renumbered to be, frankly, simpler, from E1 to E5, as they only ever actually built 5 of these engines, interestingly enough. Despite how good they were, Milwaukee Road just didn't order anymore because they never really needed to. 5 was enough. And if I stopped the story there, everything would be great. Phenomenal electric locomotives, did solid work over the years, very successful, but what if I told you Milwaukee Road felt the need to go out of their way to ruin them? Because I did do that, because Milwaukee Road's really good at making stupid decisions, especially towards the end of their existence. But to be fair, initially, the decision that they made wasn't stupid like on paper. It made sense, because their goal was to extend the lives of the EP-2s. What happened was, during World War II, the engines had been used significantly, as most locomotives were, because it was World War II and everything was being moved around. But that had worn out a lot of their components, and they were also, 35 years old in general, so it's only natural they'd need significant refurbishment. Milwaukee Road did not want to get rid of them because they had been so good. They wanted to rebuild them at a cost of roughly $40,000 per locomotive, which would have been cheaper than buying new electric units and would have kept their successful EP-2s on the rails for much longer. Okay, fine. The rebuilds were to include additional traction motor shunts for increased speed, roller bearings, which are always great, love roller bearings, multiple unit capability because the trains were getting longer and even the EP-2s couldn't handle them on their own, flash boilers, and new streamlining to make them look a bit fancier. The prototype for the rebuild was chosen to be E5, and she was sent to the Tacoma shops to receive these upgrades, and it went great. E5 came out phenomenal, better than she ever had been. The changes worked, but the problem was that the project had gone over budget with her. So in order to cut costs, instead of sending the other 4 EP-2s to the Tacoma shops, Milwaukee Road opted to send them to the Milwaukee shops to do the job. And that would be fine if not for one itsy-bitsy little problem. The workers at the Milwaukee shops, basically had no experience with electric locomotives at all. Over there is where the steam engines operated, and the diesels that had been coming into the fold. They didn't know what these electric units were. They didn't touch those. That was not their job. That had never been their job, but the management was like, yeah, we're gonna need you to upgrade these, and didn't ask any further questions. And I'm about to say that the workers did a poor job, and they did, but it would probably be unfair for me to blame them entirely for what's about to happen, because management told them to do this, and it's like, okay, let's say you hire an auto mechanic, and you tell them, all right, auto mechanic, I'm gonna need you to repair this jet turbine engine. He's probably going to screw it up, but how much of that is going to be his fault completely when you're the one who told him to do that, knowing full well that this is not his area of expertise? That's kind of where I'm at with it. Anyway, in case it wasn't obvious, the end result is that all the EP-2s that aren't E5, because she was handled by the experts, were utterly destroyed internally. In the opinion of the electrification department head, Lawrence Wiley, they did, and I quote, a poor job, which would be a massive understatement. His successor, T.B. Kirk, would go on record stating that he once saw a group of disconnected wires in one of the new rebuilt EP-2s bundled together and tagged with a handwritten note that said, "We don't know where these go." Really? You got a whole bunch of extra wires in here in this electric locomotive, and you don't think that's kind of pertinent to figure out where the heck those were supposed to be? Needless to say, they never ran the same way again, ever. E1 through E4 were all ruined, prone to electrical fires and just flat out breaking down. In order to correct this, they were sent to the Tacoma shops where they should have been sent in the first place, but even they started struggling to fix them because the Milwaukee shop workers had messed them up that badly. As a result, they saw much less use over the following years, and in mid-1957 they were transferred off of their home at the Coast Division to the Mountain Division. And that transfer actually made things worse because passenger train speeds in the Mountain Division were often over 80 miles per hour, whereas the trains over on the Coast Division never exceeded 65. The faster speeds put more stress on them, and thus the failures continued. Between 1958 and 1960, all 5 would be gradually simply pulled from service, and in 1962, all of them were towed to Seattle and scrapped except one. Number E2. One of the ones that actually got the bad rebuild, interestingly enough, was selected for preservation. Quite why they chose E2 will forever be a mystery to me personally, because wouldn't you rather save the one that went well? E5? I mean, hello? But whatever, you saved one of them. I'm not complaining, They wound up donating her to the National Museum of Transportation in St. Louis, Missouri. The same year her sisters were scrapped. And that's where she lives now. She's still there, outside, but fairly well taken care of, considering where she's likely to remain, because ain't nobody going in trying to correct all this. Plus, she's DC, and overhead wires are mostly AC now, so yeah, you wouldn't really have a place to run her even if you did fix her, and ain't nobody gonna do that. But yeah, that's how Milwaukee Road had great electric locomotives and decided to just destroy them because that's the Milwaukee Road, and that's just what they do. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fun farewell.